I'd love to sit down here on the first Morning Pitt of December and talk about basketball. Talk about the Panthers' win at Ohio State on Friday, thrilling as that was, and I think there's a whole lot to talk about with that. I'd love to sit down here on the first Morning Pitt of December and talk about volleyball. The Panthers won the ACC. They got the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. They are legitimately awesome and the best team in the country. I'd love to sit down here and talk about that. But unfortunately, we here in Pittsburgh, PA love our pigskin, don't we? And, well, there's some pigskin to talk. The most recent game that happened, I mean, truthfully, because Pitt basketball played on Friday, Pitt volleyball played on Saturday early afternoon. Late afternoon, Pitt football closed the regular season at Boston College with a 34-23 loss, bringing the final regular season record to 7-5 and bringing the losing streak to 5 games. After starting the season 7-0, Pitt finishes on a 5-game losing streak to go 7-5 in a season that, boy, feels like a pretty incredible disappointment. And, I don't know if I would go this far, but I know some people have, and I don't entirely disagree, and I see where they're coming from. In some ways, this 7-5 record was more disappointing than last season's 3-9 record. And I mean, on the surface, you say, are you an idiot? It's 4 more wins. It's 4 fewer losses. They had good wins in there. Quality wins. They did things they haven't done ever in some cases, or in some cases just haven't done in the last 40 years. So what are you talking about? How could it be more disappointing? But I understand where some people might come from if they say that is more disappointing than a 3-9 record. The 3-9 record. I mean, last year they just stunk. They were bad from the start. And, you just kind of understood what world you were living in. Whereas this year teased you. It tempted you. It taunted you with a 7-0 start and the possibility of the team being actually good. Maybe really good. Maybe really, really good. Good enough to play in Charlotte. Good enough to be in the college football playoff conversation. They teased you. And they toyed with your emotions. And then they lost 5 games in a row. And they lost those games in different ways and for a variety of reasons, but they lost 5 games in a row. I even had conversations with some people yesterday, some neighborhood folk talking about Pitt. And, the general consensus was, if you took a 7-5 season and sort of chopped it up a little bit differently, let's say they were 4-3 at one point and finished, 3-2 in the final 5 games, or they were 3-4 at one point and finished 4-1 in the final 5 games, that would be one thing. And I think it'd be viewed very differently. Like, well, 7-5 is a little disappointing, but it's a lot better than 3-9. It's a step in the right direction. They're building the program back up. Got a lot to look forward to with Eli Holstein, et cetera, et cetera. Except it didn't go like that. And because it went the way it did, with a 7-game winning streak to open the season and a 5-game losing streak to close it, because it went that way, it became, it became a big bummer, is what it ultimately was. And a more depressing and disappointing kind of 7-5 than, other ways a 7-5 season could get put together. And so here we are. The first Monday after the end of the regular season, the offseason now fully in swing, wrapping up the recruiting class here, leading into signing day on Wednesday, getting started on the transfer portal opening next Monday. I'm guessing we'll see guys start announcing their intentions to go into the portal this week. We'll see players from Pitt and players that Pitt will be interested in. That will all be happening this week. And so we'll talk about it this week. And tomorrow we'll talk a lot of basketball. We'll talk about that game against Ohio State. We'll talk about the game that they have on Wednesday night against Mississippi State. And what we've seen out of this team and how they've emerged, and the Papa Amadou Conti breakout game, the old Pack Bog that we got on Friday. There's a lot to talk about with basketball, and we'll get into that tomorrow. But for today, it's football. How did this team go from 7-0 to 7-5? How did this team lose 5 games in a row? Because it's easy to sit back and just yell about, it's coaching, it's talent, it's injuries, it's officiating. It's easy to sit back and yell about one of those things as being the main reason that Pitt lost 5 games in a row. What we'll do on this podcast this morning is yell about all of them. Because the reality is, Pitt's 5-game losing streak didn't come from one source. It doesn't get blamed on one element. It's not just coaching, although it's coaching. It's not just talent, although it's talent. It's not just officiating, although it's officiating. It's not just injuries, although it's injuries. It's not just an inability to make plays at the moments when you need it, although it's definitely an inability to make plays at the moments when you need it. There's a lot of things that go into a 5-game losing streak, particularly after you've started a season 7-0. What led to this 5-game losing streak? Let's talk about it here on the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Listen, I know Black Friday is over. It's Cyber Monday today, but at Home Field Apparel, you can keep getting 30% off the entire site through tomorrow, through Tuesday, December 3rd. Just use the promo code BFCM24. That's BFCM24. Think about it like Black Friday, Cyber Monday 24. All right, BFCM24 will give you 30% off site-wide. Like seriously, everything at homefieldapparel.com. Usually we give you our promo code, which gets you 15% off. This one, BFCM24, is going to get you 30% off the best Pitt gear you can find. You've been waiting, you've been hearing me all season talk about Home Field and how great they are. This is your chance. Like if you've been waiting for that best deal you're going to get, this is it. 30% off site-wide at homefieldapparel.com. Promo code BFCM24. All right, so what happens? How do you go from 7-0 to 7-5? Funny man on the website said, on Panther-Lair.com said, well, you lose 5 games. That's how you do it. And that's true. But how do you lose those 5 games? What changes between a 7-0 start and a 5-game losing streak to end the season? And there's a number of items. There's a bunch of things. We actually did a pretty long breakdown on this on Panther-Lair.com yesterday, like 2,000 words, breaking down what happened in each of those 5 losses, SMU, Virginia, Clemson, Louisville, and Boston College, what happened in each of those 5 losses, and then what were the biggest themes. And I present these themes or these issues in no order or ranking, but I don't think you can look past the injuries. All right, I know you want to fire the coach. I know it's all the coach's fault. And I get that. And there are elements here that we're going to talk about that are the coach's fault. But the coach doesn't control the injuries. Even if you say, well, Eli Holstein shouldn't have been running the ball, it's a play call. It's a play call. It's like in 2018. Well, why'd you throw a pass to Stefano Millen and you rolled up on Jimmy Morrissey's ankle? That wasn't in the play call. You don't call, you know, it's not even part of the assumed risk of the play call of like, or the inherent risk of like, well, if we run this tackle eligible pass, man, there is the possibility we're going to roll up the center's ankle. All right, let's do it. Let's take that risk. I mean, like that's not part of it. Okay. And Eli Holstein getting hurt, whether it was against Syracuse, whether it was against Virginia, or whether it was against Louisville, like I'm not going to put that on anyone. But Eli Holstein's absence, injury-related absence, was very much a part of this 5-game slide. In those 5 games that Pitt lost, Eli Holstein played 1 full healthy game. And that was the SMU game where he came out in like the 4th quarter because they emptied the benches because they were getting blown out. He got knocked out of the Virginia game, didn't play against Clemson, got knocked out of the Louisville game, and ended up and didn't play against Boston College. I had the snaps. Somebody asked about this. He played 47 out of 74 snaps against Virginia and 12 snaps out of 67 against Louisville. Wait, I had the math. Why wouldn't I have this already ready to tell you? 141. So that's about 41% of the snaps, 42% of the snaps against Virginia and Louisville. And that was in the 2 games he played. Add in all the snaps he didn't play against Clemson and didn't play against Boston College, and you're without your starting quarterback for almost the entirety of those final 4 games, you know, and then, you know, like I say, he played against SMU. Now, Holstein didn't play well against Cal. He didn't really do much of note against Syracuse and wasn't really very good against SMU. So I'm not going to say that if Eli Holstein plays, Pitt finishes the season 12-0. They probably, they certainly lose to SMU because they did. Who knows against Clemson? Say, you know what, there's probably a pretty decent chance they lose to Louisville because Louisville is still able to run for as much as they did. And we'll talk about the defense in a second because the defense was part of this. But I think they probably have a decent chance of beating Boston College. I think, I would look at it the way the games played out. And no, Holstein wasn't playing well against Virginia when he got knocked out, but that game stayed pretty close. And I think there was a decent chance that Holstein could lead them to another comeback victory as he had done multiple times earlier in the season. I think that game turns into a win. I think the Clemson game becomes a win. And I think Boston College, I think those games that were close become wins. I do. Again, Holstein wasn't playing perfect, but I think he was playing pretty well. And I think at the beginning of the Louisville game, you saw what an Eli Holstein-led offense could be. Granted, he threw an interception at the end zone or at the goal line, but like we said at the time, it was the right decision. It was a bad throw. But he made the right decision, and there were concerns about how he would come back from concussions or concussion, whatever he might have had. Well, he wasn't having a problem processing the information and reading the field. He made the right read. He just made a bad throw. And so he got off to a good start there. I think that showed what this offense can be with him. And I think the future is bright for Eli Holstein in this Pitt offense. You take him out of the mix for the majority of the final 5 games, and that's got something to be considered. Also to be considered is the injury with Branson Taylor. He goes out in the Cal game. Doesn't play in the final 6 games. You start this roulette table or this musical chairs. First trying Terrence Enos at left tackle, then you move Ryan Baer over there, and when you move Ryan Baer, then you're trying Isaiah Montgomery and Jackson Brown at right tackle. Jason Collier and Ryan Jacoby are in and out. Enos plays left guard. You're all over the place. In the final 5 games, they had 5 different starting offensive line combinations. Is that the reason they lost all 5 games? No. Is that a good thing? Is that something you want to have happen? Do you want to have 5 different starting offensive line combinations due to injury in 5 games? No. And it's something that has to be considered. Eli Holstein's absence has to be considered. The offensive line injuries and shuffling have to be considered. And then Desmond Reed doesn't play in the season finale due to injury. Again, and you already lost Daniel Carter in the whatever game that was, the Clemson game. And then Derek Davis gets hurt. You're down to a freshman running back at Boston College. All these things have to be considered. They're not the reason that Pitt lost the final 5 games, but they have to be considered as part of the reason that Pitt lost the final 5 games. There's also, sticking on the offensive side of the ball, there's also the matter of, the fact that defenses figured this offense out a little bit. First 5 games of the season, Pitt averaged 522 yards per game and scored 26 touchdowns. That's in 5 games. Final 7 games, they averaged 323 yards per game and scored 15 touchdowns. They gained fewer overall yards in the final 7 games and scored fewer touchdowns in the final 7 games than they gained and scored in the first 5. Some of that is the level of competition. They played Youngstown State and Kent State in the first 5, as lots of people are quick to point out to me. I know that. I know the competition stepped up. The final 7 games were all ACC opponents, and even though North Carolina was an ACC opponent and that fit into the first 5, it doesn't quite fit the narrative that Pitt fell off the map as soon as the competition turned tough. Never mind that they beat 3 Power 5 teams in the first 5, but it's okay. We'll set that aside. Competition did get tougher. You know what else happened is as they got into October, opponents had more film. Opponents have more opportunities to look at what this offense did, look at what this offense was made of, how it operated, what they like to do, and got a better idea of how to stop it. And maybe Cal laid out the blueprint that Syracuse and SMU followed, and subsequent teams in the Final Four as well. But either way, there wasn't enough sort of readjusting, counter-adjusting. Once defenses started adjusting to this offense, it didn't feel like there were enough counter-adjustments from Pitt's offense to sort of react to what defenses were doing and how defenses were defending Eli Holstein and defending this offensive scheme as a whole. Maybe there's an FCS to FBS element here that you're facing better coaches. You're facing better coaches at the FBS level than you faced at the FCS level, and they're coming up with better game plans. They're scouting you better. They're scheming you better, and that's okay. That's going to happen. It's a chess match, right? Everybody gets paid. Everybody's doing their job. The key is once that starts happening, you have to find counter adjustments, and I don't think that happened. And it didn't help that they had the offensive line injuries and the quarterback went out. But even schematically, Cal and Syracuse, there weren't good adjustments or effective adjustments in the end product. And so that's part of it too. Excuse me. Still dealing with the cough. Not quite over it yet. On the other side of the ball. And this, quite frankly, this might be more disappointing. What happened on defense for Pitt in the final 5 games in this losing streak might be more disappointing than what happened to the offense. Because the offense, like, you can look at it and be like, well, all right, they had injuries on the offensive line. Quarterback got hurt, but quarterback looks really promising for the future. Cade Bell, I think it's reasonable to have some belief that he's going to turn it around and have a better year 2 than he had year 1. But the defense, there are excuses to make as far as some positions where maybe they were a little bit weaker, but there were some problems with this defense in the final 5 games that I feel like are almost sort of borderline unforgivable. I think the SMU and Louisville games in particular, according to Pro Football Focus, there were more than 30 missed tackles by Pitt's defense in those 2 games. 30. And those 2 teams combined... Where's my number? Because I have like a sick number on this. Like really sick. Darn it. It's yards after catch and yards after contact. Against SMU and Louisville. Because Pitt's tackling was just miserable. 30 missed tackles, more than 30 missed tackles in the losses at SMU and Louisville. And 589 yards after contact or after the catch. Now, yards after the catch, sometimes that's a good scheme. Guy gets open, and is able to pick up a lot of yards after the catch before someone catches up to him. Yards after contact are just getting pushed around. And to that end, I think Louisville had 140 yards after contact against Pitt. Yeah. SMU had about 67, but SMU had 219 yards after the catch, which we remember some of those where Pitt refused to tackle guys. Louisville had 143 yards after contact, 160 yards after the catch. You're talking about almost 600 yards of offense allowed after the ball carrier, either after someone made contact with the running back or after the receiver caught the ball. And there are schematic issues. There's no question about it. But that's effort. That's focus. That's desire. Things that I didn't think we would really be calling into question with this defense, or any Pitt defense. But if you're missing 30 tackles and you're giving up, between those 2 teams, 200 yards after contact? That's troubling. That's troubling from an effort and commitment perspective. But there were also schematic issues as well. That's why those final 5 opponents, SMU, Virginia, Clemson, Louisville, and Boston College, combined to go 14 of 33 on third downs of 8 yards or more. 3rd and 8 or longer, they converted 14 out of 33. Excuse me. Which is 42%. 42% conversion rate on 3rd and 8 or longer. That's bad. That is if a team converts all of its 3rd downs at 40% or better, that's good. That's a good 3rd down conversion rate. If you can hold opponents under 40%, I think you're doing a good job defensively. It sort of feels to me like 40% is like the cutoff mark for good 3rd down offense, converting above 40%, good 3rd down defense, holding them to below 40%. For these 5 teams to convert 3rd and 8 or longer at 42%. So not just all of their third downs, but these long third downs, situations that should favor the defense, situations that should not be easy makes or likely conversions, certainly not the kind of situations that you should have 42% success in. That's a major indictment on Pitt's defense. And I asked Pat Narduzzi 2 weeks ago, maybe, one of his Monday press conferences, do you feel like your Delta defensive package, that's what they like to use on third down, certainly on third and long, in obvious passing situations, 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs, they send a lot of blitz packages, they disguise things, it looks like 6 are going to rush and only 3 do, it looks like 4 are going to rush and 6 do, it's a good defensive sub package on third down, or it has been for the past 9 years or so, but this year, it felt like that package was giving up third and long conversions. So I asked Pat Narduzzi, has your Delta defense been as successful this year? And he was like, yeah, it has. It's been good. We've been really good on third down. Well, your final 5 opponents converted 3rd and 8 or longer at 42%. So no, your third down defense and your defensive package on third down has not been good. And then here's one more stat, and I wrote about this yesterday, but I think it really speaks to what happened to this defense in the final 5 games. Those final 5 games, final 5 opponents, if you consider big plays by definition to be a run that gains 10 yards or more or a pass that gains 15 yards or more, those final 5 opponents had 57 big plays, runs of 10 yards or more, passes of 15 yards or more. They actually had 26 runs in those 5 games of 10 yards or more, 31 passes in those 5 games of 15 yards or more. And it was spread out. It wasn't all just like SMU. SMU had like 12. I think Boston College had like 14 or something. Louisville had like 13 or 14. Like, these teams are putting up a dozen big plays on your defense. That is a major letdown, and it is a major reason why they lost 5 games in a row. It's not the entire reason, but it is a major part of the reason. Just like injuries, just like the offense falling off, just like the quarterback situation, the offensive line. This defense did not make the plays that it needed to make, and they gave up way too many. Way too many. Another element, you know what factored into this? Because when you talk about losing 5 games, you can can get into the nitty gritty on like one game here or one game there. I mean, there was some terrible officiating, and I'm not going to complain about the officiating. It's not the reason they lost 5 in a row, but it has significant impact on the Virginia game when you give Virginia a redo on a 4th down where they got stopped. It had a significant impact on the Boston College game where you take a possession away from Pitt where they would have had good field position. Somewhere between the 30 and the 40. And instead, the officials say that the ball hit Rylan Gandy when it clearly did not. And it was clear on video that it did not, that it hit the Boston College player, in which case it would have been down. Like that was a stolen possession in a game where, granted, Pitt lost by 11. So it wasn't a 1-possession game, but I think things look different if Pitt's able to get the ball there and potentially go down and score. Like, these were significant outcomes that changed the game. And like, there are always going to be calls that change a game. And a lot of them are going to be like, subjective calls, judgment calls, holding, pass interference, things like that. These right here were just BS blown calls. Blown calls. And that's a factor too. Because like I said at the start, if you're going to lose 5 games in a row, there's going to be a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of reasons you lose 5 games in a row. There's not ever just for one thing. I mean, if you could pick one element out of all of those to not happen, I'd probably pick the quarterback stay healthy, maybe the left tackle, maybe the defense not give up 14 3rd and 8 or longer conversions, or maybe not give up 57 big plays. There's a lot of things that you could probably pick just one to change, and you get a better outcome. And at this point, a better outcome means just winning at least one of the final 5 as opposed to losing all 5. But we can't do that. Can't change any of these outcomes. Can't reverse anything that happened. What's done is done. All we can do now is, I think we've done plenty of post-mortem here. We can look forward. What does Pitt need in the transfer portal? What players do they need to hold on and keep out of the transfer portal? And what do they have that they can build on for next year? Of course, on Wednesday, we're going to be talking a lot of recruiting because it's signing day. That is finally here. It's already here, I should say. Kind of crazy that it's happening this soon. We'll obviously be keeping an eye on the transfer situation. I'm sure, this week is going to see plenty of players announcing that they're going into the portal. That's probably that's part of the offseason now. Even though officially the portal doesn't open until next Monday, I'm sure we'll see plenty of those announcements from Pitt and from other schools of potential players that Pitt could add. So the regular season is over. The games are done. They ended on Saturday, but there's a lot that's going to happen. This is going to be a busy offseason, just like last year was. Well, maybe not quite as busy as last year, because I don't think they're going to turn over the entire offensive coaching staff like they did a year ago, but it's going to be real busy. And we'll have plenty to watch for, plenty to monitor, plenty to talk about on the website at Panther-Lair.com, and of course right here on the Morning Pitt on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. We have these daily Morning Pitt videos, our weekly live stream every Wednesday night. We'll have some post-game shows after basketball games coming up here in the near future. I'll keep you posted on that. I think we'll probably do a live stream Wednesday morning, a signing day live stream. Those are always fun to do, so I think we'll probably get a few of those in, or we'll get one of those in, I should say. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of that, subscribe to YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com, turn on your notifications, and you will never miss anything we do right here on YouTube. All right, other than the football game, I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope your week gets off to a great start today. Like and subscribe, and we will catch up with you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.